You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast.
You're listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. My name is Sean Wilkie, and along with my awesome co-host, we interview the innovators in this space every week. Ivan, please go ahead and introduce today's guest.
Hi, I'm Ivan Zak, and I'm happy to introduce a colleague of mine, Dr. Shannon Faulkner. We're going to talk about pet nutrition, some fun facts about Shannon. In addition to her scientific pursuit and volunteering for many animal rescue organizations, Shannon spent over a decade studying and performing the North Indian classical dance, Kathak. So on the business side of things, Shannon is a co-founder and a CEO of Because Animals, postdoctoral fellow in microbiology and immunology at Stanford University, Doctor of Philosophy specialization in biochemistry from McMaster University, master's degree in botany plant biology from University of Toronto, pet parent of two dogs, Trots, a Chihuahua mix, and Gaia, a mixed breed. We have a Canadian on the podcast. I love it. Welcome, Shannon, and thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot, guys. I'm excited to be here.
So we're talking about pet nutrition. There's so many pet nutrition products, and I'm always confused in them. And that's probably partially because I'm an emergency veterinarian. So it was always hard to learn enough about them. How one goes about to start a new product in the industry and finds a niche to do so.
Yeah, so I mean, to be totally frank, I'm often confused by pet supplements and pet products and nutrition products and what's best as well. So being a longtime pet parent, was never clear to me. And so, and even now starting this company and focusing on pet nutrition, for us, the main motivator behind starting this company, which is a company making cultured meat or meat grown without the animal, the main impetus was really to take animals out of the supply chain. So, for me, in addition to loving my cats and my dogs, I've also, of course, been a longtime volunteer in animal rescue. I mean, I haven't eaten meat for many decades now. And so it was a real conundrum for me to feed my cats and my dogs an animal-based diet. So, but of course, knowing that cats are carnivores and in the wild, the only source of complete nutrition comes from them consuming another animal, a pet parent's in a tight position. What are they to do, right? And so you're always going to choose your pet. That's just how we go. So for me, it was really about what can I do? Is there a product that I could make or that the industry could make that actually enables pet parents to choose a much more ethical and humane and environmentally sustainable type of food for our pets. And that's where cultured meat comes in. So I just sort of very, very briefly spoke about, the virtues of cultured meat beyond our pets, but in addition to what are the benefits to our pets specifically, actually that's pretty amazing as well. We can grow our meat without the use of antibiotics or growth promoting steroids that are typically, of course, included in animal feed. We don't run the risk of bacterial contamination. And of course, that can't be said for livestock that is growing in, basically a mire of fecal matter. And inevitably, those fecal microbes are found in meat. And we don't run the risk of chemical contamination either because we grow our meat in a bioreactor that's very similar to the way people would grow beer, for example. So it's very controlled and very safe. So ultimately, without any exaggeration, I really see cultured meat as actually a bit of a panacea. It helps, it really does. It's better for people, it's better for pets, and it's better for the planet.
Wow. I have so many questions. But first, I want to start with something that's been killing me my entire veterinary career from my childhood. So everybody thinks as soon as they get a cat, everybody knows that you should give a cat a fish or a bowl of milk. And I've never seen a cat in a wildlife fishing or milking a cow. Why do people do that? I don't know. Maybe you have the answer.
I like this.
I know,
question.
isn't it so bizarre? Because exactly, you never see this in nature. You also never see a feral cat stalking a cow or a feral cat stalking a pig.
Right. Exactly.
Although it would be funny if you did. I mean, we're making lots of good cartoon content here.
So it's funny because the commercial pet food industry is entirely based on protein sources that cats in the wild or in nature would never eat. They don't. They eat mice, they eat small birds, and they eat insects. So why people feed their cats fish? I think it's because cats love the smell. It's stinky. And why a bowl of milk? That one is beyond me. That one I just don't have an answer to.
Sorry to hit you with something.
I think we could blame Disney, guys. I think it might be Disney's fault. I mean, I think back to Tom and Jerry. This just could be like 100-year-old cartoons problem.
Bad influence of the Disney. But on a serious note, there's I'm sure there's so many questions that you get asked, and there's probably people that love meat themselves, and then they say that it's a natural part of the diet. And then also, the interesting question to me also as to a vegetarian. So this, from a vegetarian culture or beliefs, this is not considered, I guess, as the animal-born diet. So would we then see vegetarians also consume this type of proteins, or how do we see that?
Yeah, no, really interesting question. So I think this is where, this is a wholly new arena, right? Cultured meat. And so actually, what we're looking at right here is not a meat alternative. It is meat. The difference is that we are growing that meat in a way that basically we're producing it differently, but the product is the same. It is meat. I think your question, is this something that humans would consume as well? There's a handful of startups in globally, and about 20 focused on making cultured meat. But at the moment, actually, there's only one company focused on cultured meat for pets, and that's because animals. Interestingly, though, so what we're making, though, it's not a vegetarian, it's not a vegan product, right? So although we don't use any animal ingredients in producing our foods, initially the cells that we've taken to start to grow our meat, those cells did come initially from an animal. So we actually rescued a few mice that were destined for scientific research. So we took a very small amount of tissue from their ears and then we adopted those mice. They're now living in a plush mouse house with one of our stem cell scientists. And from there, that tissue, we basically are using that small amount of tissue and just continuing to grow those cells. And we form a cell bank based on those cells, and we continue to just grow them. And that's the animal source of our meat. But that's as far as it goes in terms of animal products in our food. So we will never, we don't call our food vegetarian or vegan because it's not. It is actually meat, just not produced from the animal.
That would be a way to feed the crowd with two fish. Also.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's really interesting, Shannon. So my follow-on question is: have you tried the food yourself?
No, I haven't, and I'll tell you why. So the first product that we're creating, that we're focused on, is we're growing mouse tissue. Mouse, because, as you mentioned, Ivan, in the wild, you've never seen a cat that stands, sits beside a brook and tries to capture the trout that swims by. And then as veterinarians, you also are probably, that the main allergens for cats and dogs, in terms of dietary sources anyway, are bovine and poultry protein. Yet, of course, those are still the main proteins that are in pet food because they're the remnants of the human food supply chain. So we saw this as an opportunity to say, okay, if we're going to make cultured meat, why don't we actually create a protein source, grow a protein source that is something that in the wild cats would eat, and mouses it. So I have not tried the mouse meat that we're growing. I don't really have any interest to be honest, even if we were growing fish or chicken, as somebody who doesn't eat meat, I don't.
You're a vegetarian.
Yes, I don't have much interest in trying it. I suppose I could for posterity, but it would really just sort of be fine. You want to see me eat it? Okay. But I don't have a taste for it.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I have tons of friends, including my partner, who's a vegetarian. And I wonder, it's a very interesting, ethical kind of conversation. If it's grown in a lab from tissue and no animals were killed to make the product, people that are vegetarian or vegan, venture out on a limb and try these cultured meats. I guess it's going to be something that we'll see in the world emerge, as time goes on, and especially as the cost of production of the meat sources that we eat in our diet continue to go up, and all of the environmental impacts that happen. It's going to be very interesting to kind of watch this space, not only for animals, but for humans as well.
Yeah, I think I know where Sean is going with this. Can you send him a bag of food? He really wants to try.
As soon as long as you have a cat.
Oh
my!
If
you don't have a cat, once our treats are ready, I will send you a sample. Yes,
we can clicker train Sean too, so that would be good for the podcast if he doesn't interrupt me.
And and Ivan, since I'm staying in your house, I'll leave the food here.
So on a serious note, we're trying to go back to serious note. So you mentioned something really interesting about the allergies. You've been at this for 3 years. I don't know if it's been already incorporated into, I'm sure you've thought about this, but have there been any studies that you started seeing if there's less allergies to this cultured mice meat than to the poultry and the cow meat? Is that something you're thinking about?
It's definitely something that we're thinking about, and definitely something that we will do. At this moment in time, we're still very, very focused on scaling the growth of our meat. So we're really focused on the science at the moment, but certainly that will be a study that we do. And to start that study early, if you will, is, as we're sort of moving towards scale, and we're just about to complete our initial nutritional analysis of that meat, to then compare it against what the nutritional analysis is, say, for example, of protein that actually comes from a mouse, or meat that comes from a mouse, or even, meat that is used in pet food, so chicken and beef, and we'll do those comparisons. And so I think it will be, even before we actually get to the stage where we're asking cats to consume our cultured meat in a study, we can already, based on science, we can start to make some pretty good guesses as to what what's safe and what's better and what's not.
That's really interesting. And, the next follow-on question is, I know you guys are not, at peak production, but it's really interesting to see that you guys won the Purina Pet Care Innovation Prize. And I'm sure that the juggernauts, Purina and the other large food companies are watching this space very carefully. What's the initial reaction of the animals to be able to eat a diet of mice all day long without the work required to catch it?
Yeah, interesting. So far with our the prototypes that we've created, the cats that we've asked, our taste testers have been very interested, but whether or not they actually enjoy it as much without having to hunt it, I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yeah, Sean, I've never seen you blink eating a steak, and you never hunted a cow, so I don't understand your questions today. From the business side of things, well, there's two sides that I want to ask, and you pick which one you want to tackle first. One, I assume that there is definitely at least a certain portion of people that are super interested in this, and the marketing, you're not just trying to spread the word about yet another food. It's a completely different thing. So what is your experience like about marketing this? What kind of traction you're getting? And the second question, with your initial sort of, as you're getting to scale in any business, while you're building up your brand and your production line and everything, it's sort of still experimental. But at scale, how would the raw materials look like from the cost perspective of producing this food long term? Is it more expensive than what we have now with the natural, or with this grown product? So whichever one you want to tackle first would be great.
Yeah, I'll answer your most recent question first then. In terms of cost, we're absolutely still really focused on bringing our costs down, which is why, neither us nor any other cultured meat company, are currently commercial, because everybody's still working on this scaling piece, and everybody is making excellent progress. And eventually our product and other companies will get to market, but the science just isn't there yet. In terms of cost, I think every cultured meat company recognizes that if we cannot be cost competitive with what is currently available, there's no reason to be doing any of this. So, we do not intend to be a niche product. Our intention is absolutely to compete against all of the mainstream commercial pet foods that exist, which means we have to be priced in a mainstream way. So what I can say is that when we first come to market, yes, our product will be absolutely, wholly unique in that it will be unequivocally the only truly environmentally sustainable and humane pet food to exist. So there will be a premium price out the gate, but as we continue to scale and hone our science, we'll be able to bring that price down to something that is definitely comparative to what other premium pet foods are costing. Yeah, that's the short answer to that. Or maybe it was a bit long. I don't know. But anyway, and then I think your other question just around the marketing piece. So when we founded this company, my co-founder Joshua Arrett, who's also Canadian, 4.5 years ago, we launched a couple of products actually early. So although there's no cultured meat in any of our products, we do have a probiotic-based supplement, one for cats, one for dogs, and we do have a dog cookie made with nutritional yeast. And so what we're doing with these early products is we're using other cultured ingredients, namely probiotics and nutritional yeast, and we're basically generating a customer base with these early health products, and we're telling the story of how we're creating cultured meat, this totally innovative new product, but through the lens of how we grow bacteria and how we grow yeast and the benefits of those other cultured ingredients that people are already very familiar with. So far, yeah, I'd say so. Our traction is good. We have customers, we have subscribers who every month get shipments of our products, and we've even recently started actually a pre-order list. So for folks who want to be the first to actually try our cultured mouse cat treat, there's a list, and people are signing up to it. And so it's not just about, I'd say, in terms of who are the people who are buying our products or who will be interested in buying our cultured meat products, I'd say they're people who are concerned about the environmental effects of animal agriculture, right? And so they themselves are trying to reduce their meat consumption, and they're thinking about doing the same for their pet. There are also people who just genuinely feel uncomfortable feeding their animals other animals. And there are also people who feel as though, the current commercial pet food supply chain is questionable because most of that meat that goes into pet food comes from, it's referred to as 4D meat, or meat that comes from dead, diseased, dying, and disabled animals. So although for any animal in the factory farming industry, there's a lot of animals that don't ever make it to slaughter, right? They either they die of suffocation or dehydration or disease before they actually make it to slaughter. There's a very high number of animals in this case. And if the factory farming industry was not able to actually make money off of those animals, the industry would look very different than it does right now. So those animals, that meat is sold into pet food. And so, yeah, and there every year, multiple times a year, the FDA issues recalls on pet food due to bacterial or chemical contamination. So for people who are skeptical of the big commercial pet food companies and want a food that's much more transparent, very clear where that meat is coming from or that protein is coming from, because Animals offers an option.
It's so interesting. Shannon, I have one more kind of burning question that I just got to ask you. So I have a friend in the cricket arena in Halifax. He's growing cricket for protein, and it's being used in pet food right now. What do you think about that industry that's emerging kind of at the same time as the cultured meat industry?
Yeah, I mean, I think, in terms of studies that have been done, I think it's been shown that, yeah, insect protein is definitely far more environmentally sustainable than mammalian or avian-based protein or fish protein. So in that respect, that's great. I would say that if we have an opportunity to streamline that process even more, so that we don't actually have to have even insect farms, if we can streamline the process even more and grow our meat sort of vertically in bioreactors, which is what we're doing, and even for people who not everybody feels this way, but some people are not comfortable with the idea of killing a cricket either. And so I'd say insect protein is a really nice alternative to what currently exists. But if we have the opportunity to opt for cultured meat, well, that's even better. So why not?
That's great. I think, Sean, you should ask your friend for a sample of that as well, of the cricket-based cookies. And with that, I'm not going to give...
Yeah, taste test of both and let us know what you think.
Exactly. Ivan, I'm going to have you over for dinner when I get the package from Shannon and the crickets. It's going to be wonderful.
That's great. Well, that's been tremendously interesting conversation. And unfortunately, we're running out of time. We have two questions we always ask our guests. One of them, is there a TED Talk, a book, a video, something that interested you recently that you would recommend to our listeners?
I'm actually one of these people who still is very much a fiction reader. So I don't subscribe to nonfiction nearly as much. So in the limited time that I have, I'm very much a reader of literature. And so nobody's really talking about cultured meat in literature. But I can tell you, if you're asking, so what, or is there something or someone who has inspired me? I will say yes. And so Pat Brown, who is the CEO and co-founder of Impossible Foods, he is an MD, PhD professor at Stanford University. For the scientists listening in, he was the mastermind behind microarray, which is a technique in science that has revolutionized all science, basically. A brilliant, brilliant man. And I met him when I was doing my postdoc at Stanford, and I heard him speak a couple of times. He's incredibly passionate, and he's a very straight shooter. And basically, what he said was, I remember listening to him saying, I had my dream job working at Stanford. I mean, certainly like tenure many times over, and he could just do any science he wanted. I mean, just sort of creative thought all day long. But he was so frustrated by the reality that the world is going to shit because of animal agriculture. And he said, nobody's doing anything to change it. So I will. And so he started a company, Impossible Foods, to make a burger that tastes, the whole sensory experience is identical to somebody eating a beef burger. But of course, it doesn't come with all of those problems that plague animal agriculture. And I was so amazed, like, gosh, this is, he's a very, very humble man, and with a lot of accolades, and it's not that he started the company Impossible Foods because out of ego or out of anything other than just this sort of drive to actually do something good. And he was a real inspiration to me.
Wow. That's awesome. And the other question that we ask, if you know someone in our industry that is an innovator that we could invite to this show, do you know anybody who would be a good candidate?
Yeah, so although I said to you that Because Animals is the only company at the moment focused on cultured meat for pet food, and that is right. But there is another company in the mix creating animal-based protein that does not come from an animal, and that is Bond Pets. And Rich Kellerman is the CEO and founder of Bond Pets. And he's doing something super cool, which is making a dog food based on a chicken protein that does not come from a chicken. So basically, he took the gene sequence from a chicken and then is using yeast to overexpress a lot of that protein, that chicken protein. So it's a recombinant protein. So it's sort of akin to, it's a protein isolate, right? So similar to any other kind of protein isolate that people might, like a whey isolate or casein isolate. But he's actually using chicken that yeast is producing, and he's making dog food that way. And I think it's a super cool company doing, with amazing technology. And I'd say, I'd love to hear Rich. I've heard Rich speak before, but I think he's a brilliant guy.
Thank you so much for listening to the Veterinary Innovation Podcast. If you want to hear about our new episodes, please follow us on any social media channel. Also, you can check out our website at veterinaryinnovationpodcast.com. See you next week.